Welcome to the Evolve Podcast, an open forum on personal growth and cultivating a positive mindset. I'm your host, Joe Fitzpatrick. Today on the show, we have Missy Graff Ballone. Missy is the author of a book, as well as a podcast called Wellness for Makers. And she's all about helping creatives, artists, makers of all kinds find movement in their practice so that they can be healthier and stronger. Missy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I read in your book that you started off before Wellness for Makers as a gymnast. Is that right?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we're going all the way back. Yes.
Yeah, going back to the beginning. So what was your life like as a gymnast before Wellness for Makers?
Back in high school, I was an artist, and gymnastics was really my movement practice. It was a really great way to get a lot of energy out. I was, moving and through gymnastics a few days a week. I had practices, and then I also did dance and stuff. It became a very big passion of mine for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I had both of those things, but what ended up happening was I tore my ACL, right before it was like my senior show, which was pretty devastating at the time.
Yeah.
But I was practicing for it. I had actually already injured my hamstring, in my right leg. And then I was babying it. So sometimes when we're babying an area that's already injured and we're not like offering it the rest or attention that it needs, our body ends up overcompensating for that. So my body started overcompensating for, that previous injury. And I went into a movement that I usually could have done very beautifully. And I landed it wrong, and I tore my ACL. And that was a very big injury for me. And then it took a while before I could get surgery and all of the things. But that experience was really beneficial and somewhat life-changing, I would say, for me, because it really helped me to, want to learn more about my body. I ended up being in physical therapy sessions to rehabilitate my knee, to get better and heal and build strength. And I just loved it. I loved learning, how much more flexibility and how much more mobility I was gaining each week. And I just wanted to be there every day. I wanted to go more and more. And so when those sessions were done, I was just like, can I keep coming? So it was really nice. And even for the surgery, the surgeon came to my room after I had my surgery, and he brought me images of the interior structure of my knee. And it was just, and my mom was like, she's not going to want that, and he's like, trust me, I think she's going to want this. This is some good work. He was so proud of his craftsmanship. And I love having those images and things. I thought it was incredible to see the inside of my knee, so that really was this start of being really wildly interested in how the body moves and heals.
Right. So did you decide to pursue a career in physical therapy, or where did you go from there?
So from there, I actually took some time. I took a year off after high school. I knew I was always an artist, and I knew I wanted to pursue art. But at the time, I didn't have the grades, to get into the schools or whatever, or at least I thought that, and I traveled. I had family in California, and I spent some time traveling and just making art. And painting and drawing nonstop and meeting other creatives and hippie kids and like whatever, and just having a good time at music festivals and things, and then and I met some people that were very interested in wellness, and my cousin had been very adamant about me figuring out something to do, to be able to make some income and that's sustainable. And so I was like, okay, I'll figure it out, right? And I met some like-minded people that helped me realize that massage therapy could be a really wonderful fallback plan, something that I could enjoy doing as I worked my way through art school. I was like, I could get my grades up and then I can, feel confident about applying to an art school. So I enrolled in massage therapy school. I enrolled in a 9-month program that was like very, like you're there every day, all day. And one of the greatest things, if anyone's thinking of going to massage school, one of the greatest things about massage school is that you get massaged every day. Okay. It might not be the best massage because you're learning, but you have to like massage each other. So, we were the most relaxed in our school for sure. So that was a really wonderful thing. So I did that before going to fine art school. I did eventually get there, right? So I took off that time, went to school for massage therapy, and immediately went I started working at a wonderful spa, a holistic spa in New Jersey that I have some lifelong friends from there for sure. And I worked my way through art school. Yeah.
What type of art were you doing when you were in high school and in the year after you graduated?
Then I was doing like drawings and paintings, like very detailed line drawings and things. And then when I went to school, I thought that that's what my major would end up being. But when I got to undergrad, I realized very quickly, just by having the opportunity to experience working with other materials, I started to learn that I was actually more of a 3-dimensional artist, so I loved working with clay. I loved working with like creating sculptures out of like paper and like in paper making. I loved and I fell in love with metal work and jewelry making, and working in silver and brass and copper and all of the things, right? So it became a really wonderful experience. I started making jewelry, not just like your traditional everyday wear, larger scale pieces for sure. And then I went to graduate school, and in grad school, I went to school for metalsmithing and jewelry making, and my work primarily focused on the body. I was there and I started talking to the different critics that were coming in and the different teachers. And I got this question actually twice by 2 different people, by one teacher and one critic. And they were just like, why do you need to tell me you're a massage therapist? Right? Like, I'd be like, I'm also a massage therapist, and they're like, why do you feel the need? Why is this important? You're an artist. You're here. Like, who cares that you went to school for massage therapy? But it was so important to me. It felt like a part of my identity, and I didn't want to just give that up. Like, it was a huge part of my life. And a way that I felt I did identify in the world, and so, one of the critics was like, I want you to draw out or create something as an artist, and I want you to create something as a massage therapist. And I want to see where the parallels are, where these like worlds kind of combine. And that was such a wonderful exercise for me to like kind of see why I'm talking about this. Like, why does it matter to me? And from that point, I started creating work that was about the interior structures of the body, like, and you could stretch the work, you can, so it wasn't like when you say jewelry, it's such a, in the contemporary jewelry world, it's such a broad word, right? Because it can be anything that you can wear. Okay. So, I started making work out of a silicone rubber, and I wanted it to be interacted with. I wanted it to mimic the interior structures of the body and have this kind of tactile experience that I was used to having as like a massage therapist, but in this wearable format, right? So it became very fun. And so after that is when I started this journey to wellness for makers, because I started making work about the body, but like, how do I then use that information to also help the creatives that I was around? We were all kind of struggling with aches and pains, and I'm not going to say I was perfect, right? I also experienced a lot of aches and pains, and wasn't using like the knowledge that I had in the appropriate way. So even though people were coming to me and asking me for things, it wasn't like, I hadn't figured it out completely yet either. And because you kind of learn skills based on how you're taught them, right? So like you're learning to hold tools based on how your teacher's showing you. So you're not really considering, oh, maybe if I hold this tool that way, I'm going to create pain in my joints or whatever. So, and then after that, I started teaching workshops at Peters Valley School of Craft, which is a great resource for crafts if you want to learn anything. And I was talking with a group of artists, and someone was like, we're all going to end up with arthritis. We might as well just suck it up and deal with it. And I was like, no, like, I know we're all experiencing aches and pains, but like, there are ways to, prevent it, to reduce it, all of the things. So I felt this like calling, this urge to share resources with them. And so I went back and I started looking for resources, and I'm literally Googling wellness for makers, like, like what is there? And not much is coming up, like, right. And I couldn't find if anything existed, it was very hard to find. And if it didn't, it was like, okay, I need to create something.
What year was this that you were looking into wellness for makers for the first time?
What year?
Yeah.
That's about 2015.
Okay. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I mean, I feel like the wellness world sort of blew up, within like the past 10 years. And, that was still early days before, content was being mass produced on health and wellness. And, people were going to things like yoga or like Pilates to get that wellness and looking at it from a specific angle, but not necessarily, how it applies to a specific population, like creatives, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. And it was so well received. Like, craft centers started wanting me to teach workshops and speak and all of the things. And I, as a massage therapist, in order to maintain my license, whether I'm practicing or not, if I want my license, I have to go through a certain amount of continuing education credits each year. So I started doing them in different self-care modalities that I could then teach and implement into, what the path I wanted to create for myself. And it was just so well received. Peters Valley started offering me a weekly space that I could just teach workshops and meet artists from all over the country. And it was also, speaking of the earlier days, it was the earlier days of Instagram. So I was able to like 3,000 followers was a lot back, like now 3,000 is like, you're getting crickets, like, but then it felt like, oh, wow, people are engaging. They're like, it was awesome. So you could really grow on the platform and get words out a lot better. I'm not saying you can't still on Instagram, but it is more challenging,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Yeah, so I definitely had a lot of support, and I was at that point doing a lot of traveling. I was speaking at conferences, and I went through yoga teacher training. I did 800 hours because I was just kind of like, if this is what I'm doing, I'm going all in, like I'm learning everything I can, and like the ways that I can share it. And it was just, it's been a fantastic journey for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was it in 2015 that you officially started Wellness for Makers under your own brand?
Yes. So yes. It started as a blog. It started, and as those smaller workshops and things. And the blog, was basically this preparation for what then became a podcast, because
Right.
I had this idea like, oh, I'm going to interview like mindful makers, right? These artists that are also wellness practitioners or have this background in wellness education that I can't necessarily provide. So like community has always been a big factor for me, like pulling other people's voices in and uplifting voices, because I don't want to claim to be everything. I mean, it was so interesting when I created it. I started talking to different people, and they were like, well, what about like, chemicals, and what about the ventilation? And it's like, I'm not an expert in everything, right? Like I have a background in massage and movement, and art. Like I cannot tell you about every craft, but I can help find someone who can share this information with you.
Right.
I can help find the books that are already out there about this topic that I am not, certified to talk about. So it was, so then it was like, oh, I'm sharing these different blog posts, and that was really great, and talking about them on Instagram and stuff. And then, it kind of kept growing from there, to speaking at different conferences. And at first it was kind of a lot with the jewelry community, because that's where I started. And then I branched out to ceramics, and like started going to their conferences, and then bookmaking and knitters, and we've hit it all, and it's been such a nice journey for sure.
When you were growing your business, first of all, did you see it as a business, or did that develop over time?
I think I saw it as business, but I think a lot of other people might not have. You know what I mean? Like when you're creating something new, and like people are like, what is she doing? Like, okay. But I did. Yeah, I took it very seriously. And it was great. It was obviously a learning curve, because I didn't get any type of business education growing up or in school, in grad school. Nothing. I feel like I wish the arts programs did incorporate that into the program, like as a mandatory, thing to go through, because like the starving artist mentality has to go, it just has to go. Like, why, like we need creatives.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, there's a lack of awareness, a lack of education in, art schools, where it could be provided, when the time is right, when you're looking to learn and, get the skills that you need to do it professionally. But that piece is missing in so many curriculums.
Yeah. And in the arts, especially, it's like, okay, you need to know how to market yourself. Even if you just want to do galleries, like I've worked at galleries for over 10 years. I spent time working in galleries and museums, and you need to be able to market yourselves to those galleries and museums, it's not just like on your own, like also talking to all of those places and how to find them and how to get your work out there. So really important stuff for sure. So I had a big learning curve, creating something that was so different too. And then like learning how to price out speaking at universities, and how much will they, actually pay you versus how much you might have asked for, things like that. but it takes time, and here we are.
Yeah. So when you were building your business, this is what I was going to ask before my previous question. But were you also producing art at the same time, or were you more focused on building the business?
I was. I had my studio. I had a studio set up first in Passaic, New Jersey. Then I had one in East Orange, New Jersey. I personally really love like the shared studio spaces that you can rent a studio and be able to have other creatives around in that space on that floor 24/7, like to be able to, kind of shoot ideas off of, collaborate with, and all of that. So that was really helpful too for starting Wellness for Makers in that space, because I had access to other artists to be able to photograph and kind of run ideas off of, what if you hold this like this, and or ask questions about their studio practices as well. So yeah, I was making work and doing exhibitions and stuff. I'm not making as much work to enter exhibitions and everything right now, because I've kind of have a lot to juggle, but I am still making and still consider myself a maker for sure, and all of that.
Right. And as your business has been growing, social media has been growing too, Instagram especially, and I know that is a big platform for you for promoting the content that you're putting out there, as well as some of the methods for cultivating mobility for makers, for artists. And I know that you've shared clips here and there from some of the bundle packages that you sell on your website, right?
Yeah, I offer a lot of different things, and you'll see them on Instagram, but there's movement classes that I've created, movement class packs that are short, beautifully done. I think because I really create these sequences based on the artist studio practice, so geared towards specific areas of the body. And then I also have, these care packages or self-care tools. They started because I wanted to be able to offer massage, and teach ways to incorporate self-massage into your studio practice, because I believe that you need to not just stretch, you need to stretch, strengthen, and massage your body. So stretch, strengthen, massage your hands, your wrists, your forearms, your neck, your shoulders, right? And even if you were someone that was able to get massaged all the time, every week, you would still need to massage yourself with your, massage your hands and your forearms and everything. So especially if you're an active maker or creative or someone that's on their laptop, anything that's repetitive that you're doing, right, you're going to need to balance that out. So I created these kits. There's the hand and wrist kit, which is wonderful. It has the wrist roller, which is I collaborate with a women-owned brand to create those, and those are really nice for elongating the muscles in your forearms, as well as lubricating the joints in your hands, your wrists, and your elbows. You can also use them on your feet. It feels really good, whether you've been sitting or standing. It feels really good to work the feet out each day. There's also an acupressure ring in there, which you rub up and down your fingers, and it just feels so good to stimulate the acupressure points in your hands. There's a soft foam ball to massage, your tired hands and work out the different areas. And then there is a strengthening tool to counterbalance the action of pinching and gripping. So makers typically tend to be in a pinching and gripping movement, and that done repetitively is a lot on the hands. Typically when artists or creatives go to take a break, their break is on their digital device, and then they're in like the same movement, you know, where they're not really giving their thumbs a break. So counterbalancing that action with a little bit of resistance is really helpful. Like I always get asked, you know, from some people, they'll be like, well, can I use a rubber band or something to do it? And it's like, yeah, of course, you know, you can. Are you going to have the same level of resistance or whatever? It depends on what you want to do. But yeah, maintaining a neutral wrist with it and neutral fingers to be able to stretch that area out helps to build strength, not only in the hands, but in the forearms as well. So I like to maintain a neutral wrist. That way I can get my forearms strength as well as in the hand.
Sounds like a lot of research has gone into the creation of this self-care kit. Did you work closely with the women-owned business that you mentioned to create these products?
They create the wrist roller. They are the creator of the wrist roller. The other products that are in the kit have developed really from talking to different artists, trial and error of, you know, kind of teaching different techniques and figuring out what feels best and what is most effective. The foam ball that's in there is a soft foam ball because, you know, you don't need something really strong. Like, you know, do I need a bouncy ball? Like, okay, a bouncy ball might feel really good, but it's can be too hard on the layer of, because there's a very thin layer of connective tissue there. So for some people that can be too much pressure, right? So I have it as a soft foam ball, so that way it's just enough pressure.
Are there like varying density balls that people could use if they want more or less pressure from that device?
Yeah, so for this, you can definitely, depending on your own body weight, you can apply more pressure. Like if you're applying any ball, if you're, you know, going on like pressing towards the table or like the floor or something like that, you're going to get more pressure. If you're up in the air in your hands, like it's going to be less. So you can really modify it that way with the amount of pressure. With the different density balls, you know, like if you were to get, you know, each ball that exists can offer a different amount of pressure right away from touching, right? So I always tell people, like, a golf ball is too hard, you know, like, yes, you can grab any ball and just like rub your hands, but like the smaller the ball, the more pinpointed you're going to get to specific areas. So like I love this area like right above, like by my elbow at the upper forearm. I love to massage that area with the soft foam ball. You know, you can get more direct with that, like a smaller area. If I was to hold a tennis ball and rub that between my hands, is it going to do something? Of course, it's going to hydrate, you know, like the connective tissue. It's going to get blood flow moving, but it's not going to be pinpointed. You know, it's just you're just going to kind of like rub your hands together. A tennis ball on the bottom of your foot, now that's going to feel great, right? But in between your hands, might not feel like the same.
So what is your like massage practice, your art practice look like now that you've like created this business and grown it to what it is today? Have those practices changed for you?
Yeah, so I feel like every season is different, right? Yeah. Like for everyone based on their life, you know, right now, I've been enjoying my drawing practice again, you know, and painting here and there. And so I'm not making as much jewelry right now, but I am, you know, still creating, right? As for massage, I incorporate a lot of self-massage into my everyday practice. I use my wrist roller all the time. I use yoga tune-up balls a lot. And I focus a lot on like movement as a lifestyle. So I think a lot of times we get confused or even intimidated by the word movement, right? And the word movement is not exercise. It doesn't mean you have to be at the gym all day. It doesn't mean all of those things. The word movement literally means to change position. And I like to encourage people to change position as often as possible in a variety of ways. So for me, I love taking a variety of movement classes as well. I love teaching movement classes, all of that. And honestly, it doesn't have to be long. It can be 10 minutes. You can be building a sweat, no problem. All of that, sure. But movement as a lifestyle is different than taking a class, like a workout class or going to the gym. Movement as a lifestyle is like, I'm going to make it a point to change position at my workspace multiple times throughout the day. I'm going to, make an excuse to touch the top of the doorway every time I walk out of the door. So that way, I'm reaching my hands above my head, which I might not do otherwise. For me right now, I'm enjoying this journey of motherhood, and my little one is 18 months old. And so I'm seeing this beautiful mobile baby, right? Like, enjoy these very natural movements, like movements that we, all start out with. If we're able-bodied, right? We all start out with these type of movements, like squatting, kneeling, right? And those are not hard movements for us. It's like my little one can rest in a squat for a very long time, right? He can kneel for a very long time, and it is not bothersome. We eventually lose access to these resting poses. We lose access to them when we start incorporating chairs that do not encourage movement for long periods of time. So one of my movement practices right now as movement as a lifestyle is literally mimicking my little one. If he is in a squat, getting down on the floor and squatting next to him. If he's like kneeling, one knee is up, one knee is bent, right? Like I'm trying to mimic what he's doing. If he's getting up from his knees, okay, I'm going to get up from my knees. And I'll tell you what, it's a lot of work, right? But it's so worth it, right? All of a sudden, more hip mobility. Oh, that's interesting. What are we doing now? What are we climbing on? Can I climb up the stairs? Can I do these things? I also spend a lot of time carrying him, rather than a stroller. I love the baby carrier. I'm not saying I never use a stroller sometimes, but the majority of time that he's been around, we have embraced the baby wearing carrier for those types of moments. And, baby wearing, one, it's a lot of work, and it makes walking cardio, they talk about it in The Comfort Crisis. This is a book I read, but he talks about it, about how they do this in the military. They wear like the weighted backpacks and things, right? So it's like, and it turns walking into cardio, and it's like, wow, that's awesome, right? So there's so much benefit to these like movements that we end up trying to get more comfortable by, incorporating all these chairs and these other things, but we actually, like, what are we missing out on?
Yeah, it's a great perspective. And it's so great that you can incorporate that movement practice with your son and find the joy in it too. I'm sure there's a lot of silly moments along the way.
Oh yeah. And it's like, I don't know, he's a little big for his age. Like, he's tall, he's in like the 95th percentile. So it's like, oh my gosh, my baby's growing so quick, right? But like, I don't want to not be able to carry him. I don't want to feel like I'm not going to be able to lift him up next year, like, so I'm trying, I'm getting strong and like, I see like, how strong I get from just like embracing that.
Do you do any other types of movement to cultivate that strength, like, lifting weights or any other forms of cardio?
I lift my baby over my head all the time. No, I'm not so much, I do hiking, right? Like I love hiking and being like near the river, going for walks every day. I have a yoga practice and different types of natural movement practices. But honestly, I've always been into like your body weight kind of movements, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like rather than lifting weights and stuff, I've been more into using your own body, like those types of movements.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Do you have any like one-on-one clients, or do you have any like recurring classes that you do?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So I do work with clients one-on-one. I do different coaching like packages. And I normally take clients on at a certain time. I'll like open it up for when I'm ready to take on a certain amount of clients, and it'll be like a 6-week or an 8-week, whatever situation. I have a group one happening soon. I normally launch a group program every like 6 months or so. And it's called From the Ground Up, and you get access to like, 6 weeks of course content, and it has like so much movement stuff, and we go from each body part so that we really understand your structure from the ground up, right? And how to maintain this neutral alignment in and out of the studio. And also I meet with the group virtually, and we're able to like get so much done out of that. I love working with clients one-on-one as well. For a while, before I had my little one, I was doing like I had a membership going, which is not, I don't currently have the membership anymore, but we were doing weekly classes, and it was so awesome to see the clients like results and to see like shoulder injuries, like people that, because one of the greatest things is like seeing someone go from I can't lift my arms over my head from here to like full range of motion. It's pretty awesome to see what can happen in a short amount of time with consistency and dedication. So yeah, so I do have that. I do programs usually at different craft centers and art centers as well. But I do have weekly for weekly content. I have class packs, so you can download, gain access to. I have a free one if anyone wants to try it out. It's for your hands, wrists, and forearms. It's a movement class for that, and it will leave your hands feeling really great. And then I have movement class, which means it's like a class pack is 3 movement classes sent to you over the course of 3 weeks. And they're in specific area target points of the body. So there's the hands, wrists, and forearms, there's the hips and pelvis, there's the neck and shoulders. So they're just filled with good information for you to like kind of take what I'm talking about in my book and take what I talk about like on these podcasts and things like, and start implementing them into your practice and start feeling what I'm talking about. Because sometimes like you can hear it and be like, oh, okay, but it doesn't necessarily click until you feel it in your body.
That's when everything, gets personal, right? When we are able to have the experience ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
much like pain, it's not really something we can relate to until we're experiencing it, right? And
right.
I think having that awareness and being able to connect to having that shared experience is really crucial.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. You mentioned pain, and then I just felt like I should also just share real quick.
Please do.
Like, I talk a lot about this a lot, but pain to me is pain is a signal that your body offers you to be able to communicate with you, right? Just like our hunger signal goes off when we're hungry, and if we don't listen, we get hangry, we get really thirsty and dehydrated if we're not drinking enough water. If we have to pee and we don't go pee, right? Like, you're risking a urinary tract infection. All of these things, our body is providing us with information. And if we don't listen, the signal gets louder and louder until you reach injury. So with movement, it's the same, right? Like, we need movement, and we know when the pain signals are going off, right? Like, oh, my low back is kind of hurting, but I'm going to keep going, right? Or my legs are starting to feel tired, but I'm not going to get up and walk around, like, if we ignore it, then 20 minutes later, it's going to be louder. 20 more minutes later, it's going to be louder until we can't handle it anymore. And then you're going home in pain. So there's little things you can do, like getting up and walking around, squatting down on the ground, switching positions. Like, if you have to sit, get a chair that encourages you to move more, meaning it doesn't have a back. It's not like ergonomic big thing that you just like rest in and the chair does all the work for you. Like, your body sitting for long periods of time can also be a workout, right? Like, holding yourself up tall can be a workout. Having and maintaining a stronger posture and alignment, it's not an easy thing, right? But it's worth it, because over time you get stronger, you retrain your mind and your body to maintain that stronger habit, and you feel a lot better in your body.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. Movement has been so essential for me, not just in my physical health improvements, but also my mental health improvements. It's all connected, and doing various types of movement, from yoga to running to bicycling, strength training, rock climbing, all these types of movements can be, so great to not just feel better physically, but also feel better mentally, overcoming difficult circumstances, whether that's lifting weights or climbing up a rock wall, or, running a marathon or half marathon, what have you. It's all so foundational to who we are as human beings, and pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone, so that we can, no pun intended, but evolve to, the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I love what you're saying. And like, okay, I listened to a podcast episode with Katie Bowman recently, and I don't know if anyone is familiar with Katie Bowman's work, but she is an incredible resource for movement as well. And one of the things I loved how she talked about it recently was in her new book, Rethink Your Position. She mentions like almost like movement hunger, like that signal that we were kind of talking about earlier, but in even deeper, like if I'm getting upset, do I need to move? Like, if I'm getting really frustrated with my family or my friends right now, or like my work, is it because I need more movement? Like, do I need to get outside and take a walk? And I just thought it was really a really wonderful way to think about it outside of just like pain, like, oh, like, I'm really stressed. Does that mean I just need some movement? Right. So definitely something to think about. I know for myself, like, if I'm getting frustrated and if I'm not feeling good, like, getting outside quickly, helps me to feel better, helps me to, feel more in my body. So, yeah. And I love all of the all of the things that you mentioned, like, yeah, and they're so physical, and also like I don't know, like also bring you into, I forget what I was listening to recently, but like with rock climbing, you mentioned, like it's kind of like this experience that forces you into the present moment.
Absolutely.
Right? Like we are, you have to be paying attention. You have to be in that present moment. If you're not, you slip. You're not, like, especially if you're like bouldering or like, you know, out on an actual, like, you know, not in the gym with your buds or whatever, but like if you're out there, like one slip and that's a problem. So like you and your partner, if you're on a rope, right, like you need to be in that present moment. And like how beautiful is that? I'm trying to think about what I was listening to when they were talking about it, but yeah, I just love that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. You know, I definitely think it helps cultivate that presence, and you know, being more in your body and less in your head has been really helpful for me. You know, with running especially, like running was the first movement practice that I started doing more consistently, and then that just expanded, you know, what I thought I could do, and you know, I think it helped cultivate that that need for more movement in my life. And I've heard from multiple people, my brother as well, how like the more movement you do, the more movement you want to do, right? Because of that hunger. And you know, when you start to see the benefits of it, of course, it's only natural to want to get more of those benefits. And I think that is a big part of it as well. You know, being able to see the good results from it, whether that's changes to your physical body or changes to your mental and emotional state, it's really a game changer, and it's natural to want more of that. So I definitely think more people could benefit from, you know, making movement more of a priority in their life if they're feeling unhappy with their body or unhappy with their mental and emotional state. Because just getting outside, like you said, spending some time in some green space, going for a bike ride, going for a walk, even like just around the block, with wonders.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with that. Like, even if you were like 1 minute, like I'm just gonna spend 1 minute, like massaging my wrist or stretching. I'm gonna do one stretch, or I'm gonna walk outside and walk for 2 minutes or whatever. All of a sudden, it's 5 minutes. You know, because you naturally, the hardest part is just starting.
Exactly.
Like, even with the toolkits that we were talking about earlier, like the hardest part is picking it up and using it, right? Like it can sit on people's tables and they don't use them, right? But the second you start to, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, it feels so good. I got to keep going, right? Like, and it's no problem. So starting to move more, it's like the hardest part is doing it. The hardest part is getting to the yoga class. The hardest part is getting to the Pilates class, is getting to the rock gym, is, you know, getting the bike out. Like those are all always the hardest part. And it's not just for one person. Like I feel like that's a pretty universal thing for most people, right? Because it's like, well, I don't have time, or I feel like I can't, I have other whatever it is, right? The stories we tell ourselves, you know, but carving that time and space out for ourselves is so important. It's like, you know, for people who ride bikes, I know it's like, that is like an incredible experience. You know, I'm assuming it's like I'm thinking of like mountain biking and different things, but I love I love riding my bike down the rail trail. But I know like some of my friends who are like really into biking, it's like a really incredible experience, right? So there's so much there, and it's just like start, because then you're just going to keep going, and it's going to be so worth it.
Yeah. I love a good rail trail too, especially
Yeah.
the scenic ones. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. Ours is like right along the Hudson River. So it's
Beautiful.
really beautiful, like seeing bald eagles and, cranes and all the wildlife there is so nice. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Looking at nutrition, what does your nutrition look like? What do you eat to help you feel your best?
So my nutrition, I'm a vegetarian.
Right on.
It's just something that's been important to me since I was pretty young. And I've just made it like my lifestyle. I didn't become a vegetarian like for diet culture or anything like that. I'm not for that. Nothing, not to be judgmental. I think it can really, it impacts people's emotional well-being when you think of it like that. But yeah, so I'm a vegetarian for different, like for reasons of animal
Animal welfare.
cruelty and all the things, right? Environmental reasons. Yeah. So and in yoga there is this word ahimsa, which is to not cause harm. So that's always been pretty important to me. And I'm not going to say like I've been a vegetarian my whole life or anything. Like I actually stepped away from being a vegetarian in college and because I don't know, I felt a lot of pressure to eat meat, right? Like I don't know,
From your peers?
From my family, right?
Oh, okay.
Like yeah, I felt a lot of pressure, and it's then there was like there's this book called Homecoming, which has been it's really important to this idea is like healing different traumas and wounds and whatever, and kind of coming back home to yourself. And I just love this idea of coming home to yourself. And so like becoming a vegetarian again was part of like coming home to myself, because it was like, why am I like kind of diminishing my beliefs or not setting these boundaries for myself because I'm concerned about how making other people feel comfortable? Because honestly, what it came down to was other people were uncomfortable that I was a vegetarian. Why is that? Like, why does that make you uncomfortable that I'm choosing, this choice for myself? And then like for my family, if that's the case, right? Like not my, I meant, and I didn't mean like my family as like my husband and my baby, right? Like we're all vegetarians together, but yeah, like my
extended family, in-laws.
Yeah. So and now like they get it and support it. But when I was younger, especially in high school, I had started my journey as a vegetarian, and I felt a lot of that was because my friends were vegetarians, and like we were kind of like trying it out, and and it just kind of started to make sense to me. And I also started to realize that I felt better. And yeah, but I got a lot of pushback from my family. I was like, people would put, meat on my plate and just pretend like it was all good. And, and it's like, I'm not sitting here saying anything to you, so there was a lot that happened there that I kind of had to get over in myself, because I started to realize, here I am, like, we don't like, even during that time, my husband and I, we were living vegetarian lives at home. It was only when we were out to like please others.
Yeah.
So it's like setting boundaries for yourself.
Was your husband already vegetarian, or did he switch his diet when you guys got?
Yeah, so we've been together since high school. So we kind of grew up together and had these similar influences and ideas coming up, at the same time. So as we were growing together, the ideas kind of like meshed well. So I was a vegetarian first, and then he became a vegetarian as well because it made sense to him. And then like, we were kind of oh, maybe I'll become a pescatarian, and then maybe I'll, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, um, we're trying to figure it out, like figure out how to keep the peace, I guess. And that didn't keep the peace within us, you know?
Yeah.
So
So, did the social pressure that you received from your family about being vegetarian, do you think that was cultural? Like, are you Italian?
yeah,
Is your husband Italian in his family?
yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah. So I know, like in certain cultures, meat is a focal point of a meal, um, and animal products are incorporated in the pasta. The meatballs, the whatever you got, and you know, um, it, it's food is personal, right? Like
yeah,
especially in a big Italian family, where like everyone comes together for like a family dinner, and it's all about spending that time together, sharing that meal together, breaking bread together. Um, it's so important to the family dynamics, and for someone to change their diet sort of seems like a disruption to those like
yeah,
family values, right? Is that where
yeah.
we're
I
coming
felt
from?
like they were taking it personally, you
Yeah,
know? Yeah, I felt like, so honestly, to be totally honest, that when I became a vegetarian again, I just didn't say anything.
yeah,
We just didn't tell them.
sure.
And they didn't even notice, you know? It was just like, it wasn't until I was pregnant that, you know, I feel like it. And then when I was pregnant, I really didn't want to say anything because I was like, oh God, that's all I need is
Yeah.
like, oh, she's pregnant. And,
You had a vegetarian pregnancy?
yes.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Vegetarian pregnancy, and baby Leo is full vegetarian. Yeah.
Great.
And my midwife has no problem with it the whole time. Any doctors I spoke to, they were all very supportive, and thought it was they said, like, that those concerns are very like old concerns, and
Uh-huh.
that, like, they would have maybe put me on, made sure I had more vitamins or something if I was a vegan, but as a
Right.
vegetarian they didn't have any concerns. So yeah, I had a vegetarian pregnancy, and then it was like around that time I had my shower that some of my family members realized that they're like, how long have you been a
Yeah,
vegetarian?
wait, something's not connecting here.
Yeah, wait, what? And it's like, where have you been? So my friends obviously knew and all
Yeah,
those things, but it's like for certain families, like, it's fine. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. And then now they all know, and it's like, whatever. But
that's good.
yeah.
Well, I've been vegan since 2017. My family definitely, had their concerns and jokes, and my mom still sometimes asks me if I, eat fish or if I eat eggs from time to time. But that's okay. I think it's important to have some grace with family members, and
Yeah.
just use it as an opportunity to promote more awareness about like what I do eat, what I don't eat, and then also
Yeah.
like, I love sharing recipes with family members too, and like cooking for people. Now probably compared to when you were in high school, there are a lot more vegan options
Options.
available
Yeah.
at the grocery store.
Yeah.
You can get vegan and vegetarian food anywhere, and it's much
Yes.
more accessible.
It was not as accessible then, and it was like, I don't know, for my family it was like unheard of, it was like, um but I've always been a little different than them. It's fine. And yeah, there weren't as many options, and honestly now, now we incorporate so much more vegan into our lives too, where it seems like that's the path that it's headed, for sure. But yeah, it's just, it's interesting,
Yeah, for sure. So do you guys still do cheese and eggs, or?
Yes, we do currently, but the more I've been learning,
Yeah,
the less I've been wanting to do that.
I understand.
And I
Yeah.
feel like, I don't know, I'm just like, I feel like I don't want my baby to be like, why did you incorporate those? Because like for me, like, I don't know, like I know a lot of people are like, oh well, he should have the choice and this and that. This is so interesting. I did not expect this podcast to go this way.
Yeah, I love.
Nor have I been
talking
public
about
about this type of thing. But I feel like I'm very fortunate. I have a good friend who also had a vegetarian pregnancy, and she was my roommate in college actually, and we both went through pregnancy at like the same time, and we're raising vegetarian babies and whatever. But one of the things that I loved, an account I follow, she's a vegan mama, and she talks about because they're like, especially during pregnancy, I was like, oh well, am I going to raise him vegetarian, or am I going to give him the choice, right? And it's like, I'll give him the choice when he's old enough to decide, after he has all the information he needs, right? Like, of where meat comes from and like how it's created before, like, like I didn't get the choice. I didn't get the choice to decide until I was older, right? Like
both ways. Yeah,
yeah,
as the parent of a child, you have to make decisions for them up to a point when they're able to make decisions for themselves. And of course, like you said, like was my experience as well. When you're growing up, you don't get to decide what you're going to eat. Like your parents are telling you what you're eating, and that's that.
Right.
But then, when you get older in like middle school, high school age, and you have more awareness about that type of stuff, you can start to make those changes. Have you thought about like at what age you would like start exposing him to stuff like that? I know like with like the proliferation of vegan and vegetarianism, there's age appropriate resources.
Yeah, I just ordered his first book about animals and happy animals, and then it's friends. The book is called Happy Animals, Friends Not Food, and it explains at an age appropriate level like what each animal that they are loving and what they love to do, and how they're kind of similar in ways to our pets and not food, and they don't want to be food. So so I'm definitely going to be teaching him from a young age what it is, so that way he has the information he needs.
I love that. Definitely am interested in sharing that book with people. I have nieces and nephews. I don't have any kids of my own, but that would be a nice gift to give to my sisters or my brother. My brother just had his first baby.
Are they vegetarian or vegan?
No. One of my sisters was pescatarian, but she is not anymore. Yeah.
And like the nice thing about the book is also it provides the perspective. So it's like you can offer it to them as like, rather than being like, well, here you go. You can be like, well, this is so that way they understand why I don't eat meat, and so they, just so they can understand another perspective. And it's not like a pushy book at all. It's just like, offering the information.
Yeah, I like that. Sharing an alternative perspective to help them understand me better and my choices. And that could inform their decisions as they get older.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So do you share any nutrition advice with your Wellness for Makers audience, or do you stay
No,
out?
I don't really do nutrition, like I'm not trained as a nutritionist. I've chose a vegetarian lifestyle, as I mentioned earlier, like movement lifestyle, vegetarian lifestyle, like that's like been important to me. But no, I don't really do that. If anything, I'll promote a nutritionist or someone that I might know that can offer some type of resources.
Okay, cool. I was just curious about that. So we're going to move towards wrapping up, but I just have a few more questions for you, starting with our mindset moment. What is a quote or phrase that helps you to stay positive in difficult circumstances?
Honestly, I am a huge fan of different affirmations and like finding your own. One of the ones that is just with me right now is, I have a couple, if that's okay. One I say a lot is, I am capable and I am worthy, right? And I think that we all need that kind of reminder sometimes. So I write it a lot. I text my friends it a lot. I think it's important. I am capable and I am worthy. When I get overwhelmed, one that I actually got this one from Gabby Bernstein, but she's like, a public person, a good person to follow. But it's like, peace begins with me. So just like, so if I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed and I'm walking, I often, just keep saying peace begins with me. And that, I find that very helpful.
I want to reflect more on that. So what significance does that have for you?
Well, I think that sometimes, I can find it can be easy to get overwhelmed, like when when I get overwhelmed, I feel like, I can start to kind of, like most people or anyone, right? Like you kind of start to spiral, like, oh, you start worrying about this, and this, and then before you know it, it's like, you spiral, you're like getting upset with people about whatever, and it's like something so silly that it's might have started from or triggered from or whatever. And it's just like this reminder to come back to the peace, and come back to finding peace within yourself. So I just found it to be a really powerful one. And I like to kind of say it to myself as I'm walking a lot,
And do you feel like that piece that starts with yourself, does it have like a ripple effect out to other
Absolutely.
people?
Absolutely. I feel like when you have these types of practices, when you're caring for yourself and like reminding yourself like to come back to your own inner peace, or find, working towards finding that, you can definitely have a ripple effect. I feel like it's a mirror effect, right? Like you end up giving out that feeling to others, and others end up bringing that peace back to you. And like, if I'm starting from more of a grounded state, I'm going to interact with people around me from more of that perspective and that energy level, right?
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. Next is our PMA Warrior of the Week. Who is someone who helps you to maintain a positive mental attitude?
Honestly, it's honestly my baby, right? Like, and I know I should be like offering someone like a big name or something, but honestly, it is like my baby. And
He's the most important person in your world right now. That makes sense.
He is the most important person in my world right now, my little best friend. And when I see him, and it's like, this can be for anyone, whether you're a parent or not, and like you see a loved one that you care about so deeply, like just coming back to like actually seeing them, like when I get to like just watch him like play or smile and like give you that look, you're like, oh, okay, like this is a reminder that whatever else is not as big as, my brain is trying to make it out to be. Sometimes our brains, as like just like a natural instinct, we look for problems to try and protect ourselves, right? So like the brain wants to find the problem to fix, or the problem to kind of go on and on and on about in your head. So it's like coming back to that present moment, that peaceful state. And like kids are just so in that present moment, like especially little ones, before they're like introduced to all the technology and stuff, like they're just so present, and like just such a reminder of that state that I feel like so many of us are searching for, once we, are just in it all,
Yeah, and I think, that tendency to look for problems, it's a survival mechanism that, dates back to the beginning of man. And, I've heard other people talking about this. My friend Mike Metzger, who's on the podcast, wrote about this recently. How in modern day society, we don't really have the problems of the caveman, of like being attacked by a tiger or something like that. But we do have our own problems that we're dealing with in our current society, and those are worthy of like spending time pondering over and hopefully trying to fix. But when it comes to interpersonal problems that are part of our imagination, or they're not as urgent, we do tend to over-exaggerate them, or create problems that aren't real or aren't realistic. So the point that I'm getting at is that, it is so important to come back to that present moment, and, find moments of gratitude. And I think, like you said, kids are a great example of being able to be present with the here in the moment. And we should try and be more like kids.
Yeah, no, for real. I feel like it's like something that we feel like we're missing a part of ourselves at times, and like that's what we're coming back to, is like all the way down, like that childhood sense of wonder, that childhood bliss, there's so much goodness there. But yeah, and like thinking about the hunter and gatherers, I think a lot about that when I think about movement, and like I was saying earlier about like baby wearing and like carrying, and and like squatting and all of those things. Like these are natural movements that we were doing earlier before those chairs were integrated.
Right. Yep. So it's all about getting back to basics.
Yeah, totally.
Natural. Yeah, I love it. Lastly, where can people connect with you if they want to follow along with your journey or check out some of your movement practices?
Sure. So my book and my courses are all at wellnessformakers.com. You can also get my book on any of the online retailers that you shop at. If you shop at wellnessformakers.com, I will sign the copy for you though. And then I'm on Instagram at Wellness for Makers. I have the Wellness for Makers podcast that's on iTunes and all that. And I guess other than that, I'm only on Threads. I'm not on Instagram and Threads now because they're kind of integrated, right, and that's fine with me. I'm not on any of the other platforms right now.
Cool. Do you have an anticipated release date for the next season of your podcast?
The podcast will be coming out the next season. Right now, there's over 50 episodes. They are waiting for you that are filled with awesome information, awesome conversations with other wellness practitioners, physical therapists, occupational therapists, ergonomists, artists who have gone through different pains and strains and injuries and overcome them. All wonderful resources, nonprofits to know about, That's going to be coming out again. The new episodes will be launching in the fall. I don't have a specific date yet, but they're all being recorded right now, and there's some really good ones to look out for.
Awesome. Well, stay tuned for that. Thank you so much, Missy. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks for watching Evolved Podcast. Follow at evolvedpodcast.co on Instagram for weekly updates. Subscribe to Evolved Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and like your favorite episodes. Production and editing by Joe Fitzpatrick. Our theme music, Endless Cruise, is written and performed by Fingers, spelled F1NG3RS.